pitch, that was the team that was.
To tell you the truth, I'd never even heard of them before I went down. I didn't even know what it was, Leeds. You know, for some obscure reason, I thought it was in Wales.
My mother could probably went into that Leeds United side at the time and played at centre-half because the players round about are that good.
The target at Leeds United was to win everything, and that's how colossal a club they were.
And we could mix it. Nobody liked to play against us. That's what we wanted. We wanted people to come to Ellen Road and not have a nice afternoon.
It was unbelievable coming down from Scotland and you get into the dressing room for the first time. I mean, it's like opening up a football magazine, all household names, like people like Jack Charlton had won the World Cup. But of course, there was a huge Scottish contingent.
This is the story of Clan Leeds, a little bit of Yorkshire that for a time in the 1970s was a piece of Scotland. Gordon McQueen, Peter Lorimer, Eddie Gray, David Harvey, Joe Jordan and Billy Bremner. Legendary Scots who added the Tartan touch to Don Revy's famous Leeds United. It was the summer of '73, and in the previous decade, Revy's Elland Road teams had been winners, picking up a league title and several major trophies along the way. But they were capable of losing spectacularly too. In the season ahead, this was a side with something to prove.
We had so many disappointments, so many finals. I was in 10 finals and I won 4. And we lost the championship, the league, on goal difference on 2 occasions, and we were second on that many 10. Never out the top 4 in 10 years.
Leeds United had just pulled down the curtain on a season which was, by their standards, a shocker. They had been humiliated in the cup final at Wembley by 2nd Division Sunderland, and the press had a field day with Revy and his players. The headline screamed that the manager would quit for Everton. But he had other plans.
I think it made Don think that the next season was going to be the most important, because he could see his side beginning to break up, I think. You know, they were getting a little bit older. And I think he realised the 1974 season would have been the last chance for them to do anything big together.
All he did was he showed us the press cuttings and the recordings on television of how we were finished. You know, we were too old, Don Revy had finished, the players were too old, we were rubbish, Sunderland had beat us, and that really, really riled us on.
He pulled all the players in at the beginning of the season and says, look, we're going for the league championship this year. Forget the rest, forget the league cups and all that. I am not interested.
He said, right lads, we're going to go through the season we're not going to be beaten.
Which was unbelievable at the time. He thought, no, that just can't be done. But he believed it could.
Their time had come. Leeds United, once negative and defensive, went through a makeover. Fired up by the criticism, the First Division was about to be hit by the charge of the White Brigade.
Here's Bremner!
Everton were thrashed in the opening game, and then Spurs were swept aside in a bruising 3-0 defeat.
Here's Bremner! What terrible marking by Tottenham!
Leeds were on fire, and it was Revy who was fanning the flames. Don Revy was special. He looked on Leeds United as his second family, and he knew when to be the stern father or the benevolent uncle. In return, he received a loyalty from his players, which was, even in those days, rare. He created a team bond that was the envy of the league.
When he brought a player in, I think he looked at the player, obviously about his ability to play the game, but also the character and personality of the player, that he would be a player that would mix, would settle in, and would go on with other players and vice versa.
When it was time to extend his family, Revy chose wisely. And when he discovered Eddie Gray, that meant another cross-border raid to a school on the south side of Glasgow for a chat with a reluctant headmaster.
Basically, he just says to my mother, I'm going to go up and see the headmaster. He's going to come down to Leeds, he's going to be a football player. So he went to see the headmaster, and I was standing outside the office, I'll never forget it, and he went in on his own. So I don't know what he says to the headmaster, or if he gave him anything, or I don't know. But that was it. I left school on that Monday and come down to Leeds.
Revy's family spirit was forged in the dressing room. Experience and youth side by side. Old hands who had carved out international careers were ordered to look after the kids.
When I went down, I stripped between Eddie Gray and Peter Lorimer. So that was a nice little touch where I was there. I mean, they were a few years older than myself, but it was done for a purpose.
Well, yeah, we used to call Joe the Chuchter. He come down. Joe is a bit dour, he's a bit of a... he's a very serious lad. Lovely lad is Joe, but he has got a serious side to him. And so obviously, if you've got that in your makeup, you're going to be on the receiving end of more stick.
The first day he came in with a black oilskin coat. I'll never forget it. He went like a fisherman and got a bit of stick about that coat, Joe. I'll never forget it. He never wore it again.
He couldn't understand it because he thought he was the fashion boy because he was younger than the rest.
But as soon as we seen Joe play, we knew he had something different. We knew he'd be a player. Aggressive, but led the line well.
A youngster like me, inexperienced and raw, and there was no doubt I was raw in those days, and Norman would have you nearly polished by the end of the season, be pushing you, pulling you, telling you where to go, and of course he was a phenomenal player himself.
Playing at Derby once, and I ran out, and the big man was behind me, laid on the floor. He shouted, "Don't leave me, Norm, don't leave." And he had cramp in both legs. He had just come down from Scotland, he hadn't played many games. But he was a good signing, and Joe Jordan was too.
In a team of favoured sons, Billy Bremner was the golden child.
I think he certainly had a father-son relationship with Billy Bremner. I think out of all the players, that was the player that he was closest to. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And of course, he was his captain and an inspirational captain as well. He had a huge influence obviously on Leeds United.
When Billy Bremner took us across the White Line, whether it's at Ellen Road or Anfield or Old Trafford, Stamford Bridge, those players, my team, we died for Leeds United. We died for that club. Billy was the best player I ever played with. They'll make players like him today.
Here's Bremner!
There was a stage when there was actually 17 Scots at Ellen Road, which is staggering when you hardly get any at some of the football clubs now. I mean, the English players were running around with Scottish accents at the time at Ellen Road.
For over 10 years, Don Revie was all-powerful at Leeds United. There was little interference from the board, and he was as comfortable negotiating big-money transfers as he was taking training. For the players, his brand of hands-on management proved inspiring.
Well, we do this every Thursday morning for the last 11 to 12 years. I feel it's been a great thing to them because it just relaxes them a little bit and gets the tension out of the muscle before the Saturday match.
To have a top manager getting absolutely soaked on a Thursday, rubbing everybody down. He used to massage you along with Sidoin, along with Bob English and Les Cocker, and used to massage you top and tail, turn over, exactly the same. Then you had your kind of plunge, and that's what we were used to.
His talent certainly rubbed off on the team. Unlike today's superannuated stars, the Leeds players were happy to pick up their pay in a poke.
We used to get paid weekly, but we used to get a brown envelope and we'd pay in cash.
Oh, I don't know. Did you take that one this week?
It's all changed, wasn't it?
I'd say, when you're picking your wages up, don't forget to go on the players' lounge to sign those footballs that, like, youth clubs had sent in, parents. And every Thursday, when we were to pick up our wages, we must have signed between 50 and 100 footballs.
It's a cliche, but I think every player you talk to about Leeds, about Don Revie, any ex-Leeds United player, I tell you, they'd run through a brick wall for him. And I think that's the way every player felt about him.
You all right, big man? Aye. Aye. You're not putting the back of your legs or anything, are you?
No.
Or you said you were a little bit. Are you groined or anything?
Not bad, no.
I remember once, and I woke up one morning, well, I was struggling all week, and I had ankles about that thick. Couldn't see an ankle bone or nothing. And my missus said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going down for a fitness test." She said, "You crackers." I said, "I'm going down, don't worry. I'll be back." But then I got down there and he puts his arm round you and he said, "Come on, I'd rather have a 3/4 you fit than anybody else, all the usual, you know. Go on, try it for me, son." And you'd hobble up there and you'd say, "It's not too, go on, try that tackle, son. Les, what do you think?" "I'd be all right. Get a strapping on, out you go."
Don't go and do silly things and put yourself out for Saturday. They've got the Easter programme coming on. This is being professional.
Oh, yeah, he was very clever. I mean, Being a good manager, you've got to be good at man management, and that's what he was good at. When you think back on it, he's a bit of a con man, really, the way he kidded you all and that, but it was all done for the good of the team.
He had a great drive that season, and he was pushing the players and pushing them, and he wanted them to go on, like they went on an unbelievable run, and he wanted to maintain that.
As 1973 drew to a close, Revy convinced his players they could win the league unbeaten. At the beginning of December, Leeds faced Ipswich. They were 8 points clear in the league and on the brink of equalling main rival Liverpool's record of 20 games without defeat. By now, United were a team on a mission.
Beatty underneath, not a good header, straight to Joris. And he scored, Terry Joris. What a disaster for Ipswich.
We never changed our formation. Why should we change our formation? We'll let them worry about us.
Jones, and another.
Systems do not win football matches. Football players win football matches. But you play to a pattern, which we did. We play a 4-4-2. Peter Lorre on the right wing, Eddie Gray on the left, Mick Jones and I up front. And we never changed our pattern.
Clark. Rooney just inside. Joris on the far post. Clark going it alone.
Leeds were on course to beat Liverpool's unbeaten record, and every team in the league was out to spoil the party. Chelsea were notoriously fierce rivals. In the FA Cup final of 1970, both teams had gone to war, in what was described as the dirtiest game of football ever played. The next game of the season would be against their bitter rivals.
Every game between those two clubs was a physical battle. So we had to go there, and obviously Chelsea are looking for a scalp to stop Leeds going through and completing that season undefeated.
By now, Leeds had fallen into a beautiful rhythmic style, and it was really just a matter of when the goal would come. It was Jones' 11th league goal of the season, and one he won't forget.
The Leeds team battled hard to beat the record and win over the critics who'd accused them of being more physical than skillful. But reputations are hard to shake, and Leeds were still an intimidating outfit.
I used to look at some of the games Leeds United play and I'd win, so I'd think, jeez, it's a bit brutal, this game, Wasn't the game I came here to play.
The first tackle you ever had was nearly always free. The first one was a freebie. So Don Revy used to say to me, Norman, just let them know you're there. And I didn't disappoint many people. So as it was knocked up to them, just get close to them, just hit them a bit. And if they picked themselves up and come back at you, then you knew you had a hard afternoon. But if they laid down and didn't come back, then it made your afternoon very, very easy.
There was lots of teams around who, one or two of the southern teams, by the time the bus came over the Trent at Nottingham, they were beat because they didn't want to come up north because they thought, woof, we'll get it today at Leeds in a muddy pitch and they'll come out and they'll steam into us. And that's how we did it, yeah. We didn't disappoint them, we'd come out first 10 minutes, hit them with everything, and they were beat. You could see that, they just didn't want to be there. They were good memories, actually.
A lot of people give us stick about how hard we were. We used to fight for that ball simply because we were brought up as winners.
In all fairness, we were unpopular because we were the best. And I think when you were the best, people don't like you.
We got a reputation and we deserved it. Looking back, we did things, I did things personally that I wasn't proud of and I look back at. But you did it to win.
And then there was the in-house tribal warfare. Did you hear the one about the Englishmen, the Irishmen, the Welshmen and the Scots? For Don Revy, it was no laughing matter.
Free kick! Any more in the book on a Saturday doing that?
We used to play Scotland against England, 5-a-side matches. But it was like World War III. It was like some of them getting rather nasty.
And at Ellen Road at that time, we used to have 2,000 or 3,000 people down watching us training at the back of the main stand there every day. And the competition between the Scots and the English in 5-a-sides, you would not believe. You would not believe. It was worth the entrance money to come in through the week to watch it. And I've seen many a scuffle between Norman and Peter and Eddie and Jack.
Hit the post! You used to have to stop them because all of a sudden you're mates and you've got a game and it's Thursday or something and you're playing on Saturday. And then all of a sudden it was tackles flying in.
Revy used to have to break us up, the Scots and the English. Many a time he used to say, come on lads, let's get in the bath. And you still used to be arguing and shouting and going off the pitch. And that's what the competition was like. But good, healthy competition.
And the two teams now coming out on the field.
But there were times when even the great Don Revie couldn't tame that competitive edge. No more so than when his players stood on opposing sides in the annual home internationals.
We played England and it was just before we had a big European match and the gaffer said to Norman, you know, I don't want you hammering into Billy or Peter any stupid tackles. But when you got out there, first tackle, I think Billy went straight in the air, and who'd done it? It was Norman, because you just couldn't help it.
Bremner. Well, the referee has got to go and have a word with Norman Hunter about that.
We played in that game up at Hampden, and I think it was little Asa Hartford played for Scotland, and Asa had a go at me and he caught me, and little Billy's the other midfielder, and you know, the blood, I got a bit of a red mist, and I went into one tackle and I won that, and the ball went away from me and I'm stumbling a little bit, and then I go into the next tackle and the ball breaks away and I'm stumbling a bit more, and I see these socks and shorts coming and I think it's Asa, and I went bang and I hit him and I really copped him a beauty. And when it all turned out, it was little Billy Bremner. I had absolutely buried him, absolutely. And he's laid there, he's calling me all the English names under the sun, and for 20 minutes after that game he chased me round Hampden. And Don Revy, we went out to see him after the game, and he stood there and he said to me, "You kicking little Billy?" And little Billy said, "Go on, tell him, gaffer."
United eventually silenced the critics who'd accused them of being dirty. But it wasn't just the carping journalists whose numbers were up.
To relieve the boredom, Don used to like to play little games, carpet bowls, bingo. And the carpet bowls got serious, you know, that was, you had a partner at the carpet bowls. You used to play pairs. And Peter Lorimer and I, we were the bookmakers, you know, and we used to run the book on it. Sometimes we won, sometimes we lost. But it was serious stuff. And then the bingo.
7 and 1, 71. 1 and 2, 12. 2 and 5, 25. 4 and 3, 43. Not again.
It was a laugh and a joke. The ritual was if you won a hand at bingo, you went up and you had to shout the numbers. So if you were a young member, went up and you had to go up, and especially when you had a Scottish voice and you're trying to say 22 or 90 and give it all clickety-click, they would slaughter you. Absolutely. So it broke the tension.
It would drag a long night into a short night because you'd play your balls and your bingo, then it would be bedtime, so you'd be ready for the game the next morning. But yeah, people used to laugh, oh, they play bingo and they do this, but it was, yeah. When you think about it, I couldn't see the modern day professionals sitting playing bingo for put a fiver in each or whatever, but we did and we enjoyed it, and it certainly didn't do us any harm.
On its own, number 5, all the sixes, 66, 5 and 6.
The most feared team in European football liked to unwind dreaming of two fat ladies, but they never lost sight of Revy's #1 target. He didn't want a full house, just the championship. In the UEFA Cup, Hibs held Leeds to a draw at Elland Road. For the return leg in Edinburgh, Don Revie had a surprise. Not just for Hibs, but for the Leeds players whose will to win was ingrained.
He said to me, Billy and Eddie, look, you know, you're going up there, but I don't want you getting injured. Your parents should come and see you. I don't want any bad tackles. Keep out of trouble. We'll go up there. And we weren't not trying, but we were just playing the kids, you know, and we just went up there really to see our parents enjoy the game. And Hibs had been down here and drew, and you know, he said that they're not a bad side, you know, so he would have been happy that we went out.
He just rested so many players. It was he more or less put out a reserve side, but Billy wanted to play. Came back to Scotland playing against Hibs, and you know, he was brought up not that far away from Edinburgh and Stirling, and Billy played sweeper and was absolutely unbelievable, gave an astonishing performance and they get through to the next round. But it's one of the few occasions, like Don Revie didn't really want to win the game, but Billy had different ideas.
Leeds eventually went out of the UEFA Cup to Vittoria Setubal and took an early exit in the FA Cup with a shock defeat to Bristol City on the 19th of February 1974.
Leeds defence absolutely wide open.
Now there were no distractions. Leeds were free to chase the dream of winning the league undefeated. At home to Stoke City, they were looking to stretch their unbeaten run to 30 games.
We had a couple of little hairy moments, you know, going to Newcastle, winning 1-0. We went to Birmingham, and I think we drew at Birmingham. But then we went to Stoke. Stoke was the place. And we were 2-0 up. How we lost it, I'll never know.
But lose they did. It was a shock 3-2 victory for Stoke.
If we weren't playing that well, he'd come into the dressing room and we could tell if he was upset, because the first thing he would do, he'd go to the mirror and comb his hair, and then he'd wipe everything off the table. And they would let you know, in no uncertain terms, that he wasn't happy.
On that day, he was combing his hair and Les Cocker was beside him, and whether he allowed it to be overheard or not, he's saying to Les as he was combing his hair and trying to compose himself, he says, Les, I think it's about time we got some players in here. I think we need to get the chequebook out.
Oh, he went mad, he was crazy, and we were well clear at the top of the league. What's up with him?
Don Revy's team had gone a record 29 games undefeated. A cause for celebration, you might think. But bizarrely, in that one defeat, Revy seemed to see 10 years of hard work begin to unravel. The spell he had cast over the team broken. His anxiety filtered through to his players, and a string of bad results followed. At times of crisis, Revy put his faith not so much in his team, but in a set of otherworldly rituals. It wasn't a rabbit's foot or a horseshoe the doubt-ridden manager turned to for inspiration. It was his lucky traffic light.
I'm possibly the most superstitious man in the world. Every year I have a light blue mohair suit made, and I wear it all season for matches. I usually put the same shirt on, the same socks, the same shoes.
I remember having a team meeting at Roundy Park, and his trousers were shiny at the back because he'd been worn that much. And he had these notes, and he was reading these notes, and he dropped them on the floor. And he bent down, and all of a sudden we heard this. He'd ripped all his trousers at the back. Well, this sudden panic on his face. And he said to one of the staff, he said, get them down to the ground, get them fixed before 3 o'clock, and really in panic, put some tracksuit bottoms on. He went down to the ground, and at 2:30 the trousers hadn't come back. And the panic on his face was immense. 10 to 3, still hadn't come. And he shouted in the corridor, I'll not use the language, but what he said, I wouldn't say, I'll repeat it. And at 5 to 3, they came in, these trousers, and he put them on, and the relief on his face was incredible.
I think superstitions only work if you've got good players. At Leeds United, they always just sit in the same seats in the coach, and they used to sit in the same seats in the dining room, and in hotels, and we used to go through the same ritual, and certain players go out in certain positions, and certain players carry balls out, and certain players put the left boots on first.
Obviously, as the years went on, he built up more and more superstitions because the way he was, if something happened good and he'd done something, that was included in the next lot of superstitions. So by the time it got to the end of his managing at Leeds, he had that many superstitions. It must have took him an hour every day to go through them all.
And then he had a gypsy coming down the ground once to try and get rid of a curse he thought was on Ellen Road. I don't know why he thought that was a curse on Ellen Road, because hardly him to beat us there. I know. But he got the gypsy come down.
He was a worrier, you know, and there was always a little bit of a doubt in his mind about what his team could achieve and what they couldn't achieve, you know, and sometimes maybe that transmitted through to the players.
Revy might have been dressed to kill, but Liverpool refused to die. They were closing in on the league leaders as a faltering Leeds, unsettled by their manager's doubts, strung together a run of draws after the Stoke defeat. All of which meant, to all intents and purposes, the clash of the clubs looked like a championship decider. It was an occasion tailor-made for the lucky suit.
That was the game, you know, in those days. The Liverpool game was always the game that everybody looked forward to. They would look forward to it, we would look forward to it. And you'd realise that, you know, it was going to be a right scrap. They knew if they could put one over on us, they'd have a fair chance of winning a league championship.
No doubt aided by Revy's host of lucky charms, Leeds recovered. By the 20th of April, Don Revie and his players were again within touching distance of the title. If Liverpool dropped a point against Arsenal, then it was all over.
When the phone call came through from Anfield that Arsenal had beaten Liverpool 1-0 and Leeds United won the championship, there was only Kimmy and I here. Elsie was away playing golf in Sheffield. And Kim and I just sat down and cried.
And so Leeds went into the closing game of the season already champions. But there was the small matter of standing ovations and celebrations.
As a young lad coming from Scotland, I just thought this is the way it's going to be every year, year after year after year. And I was to find out not so long afterwards, and wait a minute, this team is a bit unique and this just doesn't really happen that often.
Don Revie's Leeds career had spanned 16 years. The squad his family had built from scratch had matured into one of the finest football teams in Europe. He had joined as a player in 1958, became manager in 1961 with Leeds in Division 2, and left them as league champions in 74. Because when the England job was offered, the great man knew his time had come.
Very, very sad. Because when you get attached to a club like I've got attached to this one, and built the family atmosphere, you get very attached, but yes, it'd be a sad day.
I think it would have been a bigger shock for the younger players, you know, the boys that were 15, 16, 17, because he was still that father figure to them, you know. But it was a big disappointment. I think it would have been a bigger disappointment if Don Revie would have left and went to another club.
It was good and sad, because it was good that we'd won it, and it was sad because it was, one, Don was leaving, two, one or two of the lads knew they were going to be going. I don't think he wanted to be involved with telling Billy and telling Johnny and telling Norman that it was time to go. You know, I think he thought, I'll let somebody else do that. Probably people would think, well, it's a cowardly way out. No, I don't think so. I think that was probably respect for them, that he didn't want to be the one.
Funny game football. At the season's opening, outspoken Derby County manager Brian Clough had called for Leeds to be relegated. Less than a year later, he became their new boss.
Don Revie and Brian Clough, as everybody knows, didn't get on well together. Brian Clough didn't particularly like Leeds United as players, didn't like the club as such, and then all of a sudden he's there and is your manager.
And basically, he told everybody what he thought about Don, and that wasn't a lot. He told them what he thought about the players, and that was nothing. So he came in on the wrong foot, and it just never worked for him.
Clough's reign lasted just 44 days. With Don Revie gone, his team broke up. Joe Jordan and Gordon McQueen would eventually leave for Manchester United, Norman Hunter to Bristol City, and Billy Bremner to Hull. Things would never be the same again at Elland Road.
But I still think that team broke up a little bit too early. I still think they could have played for another few seasons ago.
I didn't realise until I left Leeds that there were bad footballers out there, you know, people that were useless really compared to what I'd been playing with.
It just happened in that year that everything flowed. We were physical, we didn't want to lose, we were great players, we had a great side, and we had a great 74.
Here's Bremner.
Scott.
He will go down as an all-time great, and rightly so too, because he was. People use great far too easily, but he was a great player.
Although he was little, his heart was as big as anybody's. He must be massive, massive heart. He didn't know the meaning of the word defeat.
We've had very many good and inspirational captains, but I think, you know, I could argue that Billy would be the best.
Billy Bremner, Scotland's greatest ever captain, was born in the Raploch area of Stirling in 1942. He began his education at St Mary's.
One evening when I was playing with Gownhill United, this little lad stood at the side of the park, straddled over a bicycle, asked if he could play and make up the numbers. And I asked the trainer for him, and the trainer said, no, he's too small. I said, let the little young kid play, it's only a training game, so he allowed him to play. And he was unbelievable. He was so skillful and he was tremendous. And then he was playing in the team, and he was 13 and a half, I think, and playing in under-21 juvenile football, which just shows you the kind of skill he had.
My earliest memory is of Billy Bremner as an under-15 schoolboy internationalist, because I was in the trials for the same team, and naturally Billy got the place at that time because he was an outstanding under-15 schoolboy internationalist.
At the age of 15, Bremner signed for the then unfashionable Yorkshire club, Leeds United. This was a team who seemed to permanently be rooted in Division 2, but Billy was having problems of his own with his new place of residence.
He was in digs, and then I think he'd got into the first team, but he was going back up to Scotland, up the road as they call it, from Scotland, every weekend.
I actually made my debut as a 15-year-old because at that time Billy was a bit homesick. He'd met Vicky, who went on to be his wife. It was his girlfriend then, and gone home for a weekend and decided he didn't want to come back down.
He was homesick and he did want to go back to Scotland, but he had a meeting with the gaffer, and then he got married very quickly. I think Billy was married by the time he was 19.
Obviously they moved down here, settled him down, got responsibility. So I think Leeds United and the gaffer has got Vicky, his wife, to thank for.
When I first came to Leeds, it took a while to get to know all these guys, and within a week or two you knew them, you know, but you could tell who was going to get there and who wasn't. He came out to be one of the real best ones of them all.
Two captains in conversation, and Cruyff was fouled.
Billy used to say that he never ever went onto a football field feeling inferior to anybody. It didn't matter who it was. He had this thing in his makeup, and great belief. He also had tremendous leadership qualities. I'd never known anybody that could influence a group of players like he did at Leeds.
It'd be very difficult to identify a midfield player who had any more quality than Billy Bremner. I think every attribute that was required, and even for his size, he was small, he was good in the air.
Bremner, yes!
If you were playing against him, you didn't get a free header, let's put it that way. His tackling was superb, his passing, his support to the front, scored a goal or two.
Jordan, good flick to Bremner! 1-0.
In every respect, he was the kind of midfield player that every manager wants. In that, he's got all the attributes, and he's got great determination and great courage. So, I mean, you can't ask for better.
If Billy Bremner was around today, he'd be priceless, because as far as I'm concerned, they don't make players like Billy Bremner today.
Billy Bremner was an absolutely great player. He could do things with a ball that a lot of other people couldn't.
Bremner, number 4. General trying to get back to get goal side of him. Oh, great goal by Bremner!
He had this physical side to him. He had a will to win.
The funny thing is about Billy is, Billy didn't like to train hard.
He absolutely hated training.
But if it was any day with running, Billy would have had a laugh, you know.
And yet, you put him on a football field for 90 minutes and there'd be nobody, and I defy anybody, to be working as hard as what Billy Bremner did when the final whistle went.
I remember when you got a wee bit older, we used to go up to Roundy Park, big park outside Leeds, and do our training, you know, the cross-country running. Be about 3 or 4 mile. And every year, Billy used to get down on the starting blocks, and there'd be a lot of new boys at the club, and all the young apprentices used to train together. And Billy would line up like a sprinter, and he would set off like a shot at a gun, Billy. And all these young boys would try and keep up with him. And after about 200 yards, Billy would start walking. And all the young boys would be jiggered, and Don Revy had to kill themselves. You know, the young boys thought that was the pace Billy was going to run it for 4 miles.
When you got a player like Billy, it rubs off on other people.
You all get the same sort of little attitude, we love to win.
Now under the influence of manager Don Revie, the young Leeds team improved dramatically. And so did Bremner's development as a player, as he benefited greatly from the vast experience his former Celtic hero Bobby Collins brought to the club.
I think he was a big influence on Billy. And I think, some of the training sessions we used to have at the club, some of them were quite physical, to say the least. And at times between Bobby and Billy, I know, used to have some tremendous clashes in training. But I think they had a great mutual respect for one another.
Apparently we were getting fit after my leg and what have you. He stuck the ball through my legs. And Billy then went on to tell Eddie, he says, "You'll never believe what like it was after that." And he was quite right, because I went after him with no uncertain manner. And I kicked lumps out of him.
Collins captained Leeds in the FA Cup final of 1965, but it was his protégé who took centre stage.
Bremner, I think, was a big occasion player. The first time I really noticed him was in the cup final of 1965 against Liverpool, when very dull, very poor game into extra time, and then Liverpool went ahead. Hurst scored, I think, from memory. And you could see all the heads going down, with the exception of Bremner. And it was Bremner, not Charlton, not Hunter, not anybody else, not even Johnny Giles, who took the game by the scruff of the neck, and Bremner, in fact, equalised.
All this, Charlton up with the attack. Now Bremner, he's equalised. There's Billy Bremner, the man who scored so many important goals.
Revie's side lost 2-1, but were gaining an unenviable reputation.
To me, they all wanted to seem to fight you rather than play you at football. And I'm quite sure, and I've always said, and Revy, a lovely man, Don Revie, and as a manager and as a player, he was never a hard and dirty player or anything like that, but somebody instilled it into all these players, you know, your Bobby Collins and all these guys. Most of them were Scottish as well. But the Leeds team, quite a frightening team, really. Should have frightened people with football rather than getting stuck into them.
We were an aggressive team, but we could play. You know, like I used to say, if we wanted to play football, we could play football. And if you wanted to mix it the other way, we could do that and all.
The Leeds approach resulted in a confrontation between Bremner and Mackay at the start of the '66 season. The photograph became almost as famous as the two players.
I was so angry with him on that particular day. Been out for the game for over 18 months with a broken leg twice. But this was just a little thing, that a throw in down the line. My first game back, playing Leeds United at Tottenham, beginning of the season, pushed Billy over, because we had a few tangles when we played against each other, always, and pushed him over. He got up, he went on all fours, he got up, he went round behind me, he came around, he didn't kick me on the nearest leg, which is the right one, he kicked me on the left leg, and gave me the fright of my life. I could have lifted an elephant up, never mind Billy, because I was so angry, really angry, and a bit worried as well.
Billy Bremner played to win. Now, if you don't play football to win, you may as well, you know, may not bother playing. And he had this tremendous will to win.
Somebody once described Billy as it's like playing against a roller barbed wire. And he was like that. He was always about people's feet. He was always very quick.
If there was any problem anywhere, he had to be right in the middle of it. You know, he couldn't. He'd run 60 yards just to dive in the middle of any problem. And when you've seen the size of him, really, I mean, Billy was only about 5'4", and he wasn't the biggest guy. He just had this attitude. Slightest problem on the field, I've got to sort it out, and he would pile in. And in lots of cases, get himself into problems that he should have kept away from, really.
The bond between Don Revie and Billy Bremner was particularly special and built on mutual trust and respect. Revie was never slow in voicing admiration for his captain.
Billy Bremner, he's one of the world-class players that you don't come along very often in this game of football. For the small frame, nobody knows where he gets it from. He drives his team on as captain, and he sets a great example of fighting spirit and ability and everything a manager could wish for.
He was Don Revie's sort of little golden boy. He was the player. We've got Billy Bremner from Scotland.
Don Revie and Billy Bremner together, they were Leeds United, and he was club captain, and I think he probably above anybody had a slightly different relationship with Don Revie than what the rest of us did.
Don Revie loved his approach to the game. He liked his bubbly attitude about the place and his whole manner. Yeah, you know, like the boys used to say, it was his second son. I know, fella.
I can never remember Billy and Don having a word of argument ever.
In 1969, Leeds United won the league championship at last. Led by their inspirational captain, they had become the dominant force in English football.
We won it at Anfield, and Liverpool were big rivals then, you know, and it was a no-score draw. And we went there, we knew what we had to achieve, and we achieved it. I think that was a great moment. I would say that was Don Revie's greatest moment as a manager as well. And knowing how close the two of them were, I would say that would be Billy's greatest moment as well, when, you know, the club realised they'd won the league championship.
Bremner's greatest moment was followed by the chance for Leeds to win the FA Cup final of 1970. The club were optimistic about their chances and travelled to London in the certain knowledge that they could beat any opposition on their day. Their captain certainly wasn't overawed by the occasion.
I went to one of the cup finals, we flew down, and I went to the gate at 2 o'clock and just missed him. And I went to the big lad at the door, slid the hatchback and asked him for tickets for Smith. No tickets. 2:30, still no tickets. 2:45, here Billy comes strolling out with all the regalia on the 5 minutes before he was due to play in this big game with these tickets. He said, "What are you worried about?" He says, "I wouldn't leave them with you lads. The lads sell them." So he said, "There's your tickets." He was plenty of time again and sat down. And he says, "For a cup final, you should be away in there." It's just another game to be won, he said. Just turned and walked away, and that was the kind of temperament he had.
Leeds lost the final in a replay to Chelsea.
When you're young and so in love as we.
It was one of the most shameful and violent finals of all time. And Billy Bremner was involved in everything.
Why do people hurt us so? Only those in love would know what a town without pity.
A goal by David Webb settled the matter. Leeds couldn't afford to dwell on the defeat for long. Revy tried desperately to get his players fit for the home leg of the European Cup semi-final against Glasgow Celtic. George Connolly gave the men in green and white a famous victory at Elland Road. No team had ever reached the final of the European Cup after a defeat at home in the semis. But Leeds United were determined to give it everything they had in the return leg at Hampden Park. Billy Bremner, most of all.
Bremner, number 4, taken off in the first leg, injured, but determined to lead Leeds the victory tonight on Emirates End. It's obviously going to be a game for brave men. Hunter to Bremner. Way to go! He scored! Bremner's got it! And Billy Bremner has done it for Leeds.
Billy scored a goal at Hampden Park. Blinder, what a goal. It's enough, right in the top corner.
When he scored the goal, I've never seen him get so excited in my life. You know, he rattled it in and it flew in, and he was up and he was off and that. But we never really played. Celtic were the better side over the 2 games.
Celtic now had 7 corners. Leeds hadn't had one yet. Auld. A goal! Big John Hughes. Spella Brogan again having a great match. Now Johnston.
We got beat 2-1 in the game, so we went in the cup final. I still think it was, to this day, it was because we had so many jocks on the side we didn't beat them.
They were a great side, Glasgow Celtic, and I think it was Billy was just sort of honoured and privileged to be on the same pitch as his beloved Glasgow Celtic, because he did love Glasgow Celtic. And I'll tell you now, that was his one regret, that he never wore that shirt.
Leeds United were runners-up in the league and cup, unbeaten European Cup semi-finalists. But the season still ended in triumph for Bremner.
The Football of the Year, Billy Bremner.
757, 2 and 8, 28.
Don Revy made sure there were other games to be won.
7 and 1, 71. 1 and 2, 12. 2 and 5, 25. 4 and 3, 43. Not again.
Bingo, carpet bowls, and dominoes.
We played dominoes on a Thursday night. We used to get bollocked off Revy. We used to say, well, we're not doing anything. All we do is go to the pub and have a game of dominoes, and it's sort of a good night. We maybe have a pint of beer all night, but we never had more than a pint, and we never did. And Don tolerated that and said, OK.
I think the main thing with Bill and John is that you two are the ones that make us tick over, and they didn't give you any room to work in, and when you got it, they closed your area and made you play square balls behind Terry Cooper, so he knocked you off.
If the players wanted more excitement, they never let on to the manager. When he talked, they listened. In 1972, Leeds arrived at Wembley to play Arsenal in the centenary FA Cup final.
Trying to take on McNabb on the outside, he's round the back. Clock! 1-0!
I played in 3 FA Cup finals with Leeds, but we only won it once. But I always say we won the big one, the centenary, 100 years of the FA Cup, 1972, when the Queen was there to present the trophy.
And so, at last, Leeds have got what they've deserved, a major trophy.
I says, you know, the winning team and the winning captain, once it's, you know, presented to the trophy, he'll show their, you know, the supporters of that club the trophy. Then he passes it down to his teammates. I says, you showed the Leeds supporters, but I says, you never passed it. He said, I weren't going to share it. He says, I waited years to get my hands on that trophy. He says, I weren't going to share it with you. And we never did. He never did pass it down. That's Bill.
It was great to win the Centenary Cup final. I was delighted for myself, I was delighted for the club, to captain the club, you know, a cup final and to lead championships is, you know, it's a great achievement, you know, and, you know, there was no better man to do it, you know.
Let's go to the skipper here, Billy Bremner. Third time lucky?
Yes, we're absolutely delighted. You know, we've worked hard. As we say, we've waited about 8 or 9 years for this occasion, you know, and it's all been worthwhile. I'd just like to say a message to my wife who isn't here.
Yes, do say a message.
To Vicky and Amanda and Don at home, we brought the cup home for you.
Bremner's pride was there for all to see, rivalled only by how honoured he felt when wearing a Scotland jersey.
Billy loved playing for Scotland, and Billy loved being up with the lads. He loved being with little Jinky. You know, him and Billy together were a right team. Hilarious, dangerous at times. If I was their manager, you know, you would be certainly on tenterhooks, you know, wondering where are the two of them.
I think he was so much of a stereotype of a Scot. It was almost self-parody, you know, small, fierce, brave, extremely courageous, very short fuse. Played for one of the most unpopular sides of all time, that particular Leeds United side. But I've often thought that the Scottish national motto, "Wad or medal with me," was made for Billy Bremner.
He loved playing for Scotland. I had 19 caps for England. But in those days, they didn't, you play for your club on a Saturday. They don't postpone them like they do today. We used to play for your club on a Saturday, knock a goal or two in. I'd get out of the bath, I'd be drying myself, and the gaffer would come up to me and he'd say, how are you, son? I said, oh, I'm fine. He said, I don't want you to go. He said, I'll ring Alf Ramsey, and you've got a knock. So I was telling Billy this 6 years ago. He says, Alan, he tried that with me, and he says, Gaffer, I'll do anything for you, but he says, never ask me not to play for my country, because I'm going to play. I wished I'd have known that. I've had our 50-odd caps.
He captained Scotland through a successful World Cup qualifying campaign in 1973. Jim Holton scored the first goal against Czechoslovakia in the deciding match at Hampden. And the winner was scored by his Leeds United colleague, Joe Jordan.
I'm looking forward to the World Cup finals tremendously because if we play as we did against Czechoslovakia, I think we're in with a great chance. And I think the biggest thing that we've got that I feel that the other international teams haven't got, I think we're imaginative. I think we're an attractive team to watch. I think we're an attacking team. And I think we're going to upset a few people over there.
Unfortunately, in West Germany, a now familiar story was about to unfold for Scotland.
We approached it in the usual state of bafflement, didn't quite know what we were up against. Well, we did with Brazil, of course. And we knew that Yugoslavia were a good European nation, but we didn't know anything about Zaire. And because we didn't know anything about Zaire, we thought Zaire were no good. And that was, I think, the great failure of '74, that we were 2-0 up. Really had them in considerable trouble, and I think Billy Bremner should have been strong enough had he got directions from the side he's off now to say, no, we go and we score more goals here, because this is a side in disarray, Zaire. And significantly, of course, we scored 2 and Yugoslavia scored 9, and that was crucial at the end of the day.
Scotland played Brazil in one of the tournament's best games. Unfortunately for Billy, it would be remembered for the chance that fell to him late in the match.
Jordan, brilliant jump, and it's wide by Billy Bremner.
A typically valiant Scottish performance against Yugoslavia was not enough to give them qualification.
Number 18, Revy, has scored for Yugoslavia, and that effectively puts us out of the World Cup.
The match was drawn, so Scotland left the tournament unbeaten, and the players were frustrated and realised the first game was the one to blame for the early exit. But the welcome they received from the waiting hordes back home in Glasgow showed how much the fans appreciated their efforts.
Magic, you know, we're delighted, like, you know. I'm sure the boys are very proud. And I hope the people are proud of the way the boys played across there.
14 months later, a brawl in a nightclub in Copenhagen resulted in the Scottish captain being banned from playing for his country ever again.
The International Selection Committee has decided that the players Bremner, Graham, Harper, McCluskey and Young will not be selected again to represent Scotland.
There had been stories about one or two of the lads who got banned along with Billy from Aberdeen, that they were a little bit wild after the game, they liked to drink. And I actually warned Billy about it because I knew Billy, with a couple of drinks in him, would be dragged into anything that was going on. Sure enough, after the game, they'd played the night before, we're all staying in the same hotel. We went in the bar, and the actual incident blew up because the drinks were so expensive, and the lads went upstairs and brought the duty-free down. And of course, the barman did the right thing, saying, "I'm sorry, you can't do that." And the night went on to be basically a disaster. The whole trip went on to be a disaster. It was sad to think that such a great player and a great captain had been, in the end, sort of shamed and banned by the FA for off-the-field activities. They could never have banned him for on-the-field activities.
If that incident slightly tarnished Billy Bremner's reputation, it was completely removed from the collective memory in 1999 when he received the ultimate accolade.
Scotland's greatest ever captain, the envelope about to be opened.
And the winner is Billy Bremner.
To accept the award on his behalf, a man who was a very good friend of his, he was the best man at his wedding, currently the manager of Dundee United. Step forward, please, Alex Smith.
It was quite a touching moment for me to go up and do that, because I knew what Billy would have felt like. I think it would have crowned his whole career, that to be chosen the greatest ever Scottish international team would have meant so much to him. I know that. He would have been so pleased about that.
His contribution to Leeds United was also recognised by the unveiling of a statue. His wife, family and teammates were all in attendance.
He's been dead 4 years last December the 7th. the week before he died, him and Vicky spent the weekend at my house, and I know how Vicky misses him, and I miss him. As I say, not only as a roommate, a teammate, he's more like a brother, and I think about Billy Bremner times a day since the day he died. And as I say, I think about him times a day, and I will do till the day I die.
I knew Billy probably longer than any of them, because I went in digs there at 15 and a half, and the little fella was already in there. So it was a big part of your life, and you miss him.
It was a big blow to all the boys, you know. We all met up and we went out for a bit of a drink, and you know, had a chat about life and what Billy meant to the club.
That's Richard Telly on. And it came up, and Billy was up there in his Scottish jersey with a cup, and he's running around on the pitch and waving at people. And I shouted, "Pat, quick, it's a programme on Billy. This is in Mauritius." And we sat and watched it. And then came clear it was an obituary. I couldn't believe it, what I was watching. I mean, I'd only seen Billy about a fortnight before. And I went down on the beach and I cried my eyes out. I very rarely cried in my life, but I cried over Billy.
I love playing football. It was the greatest thing any individual can do, to actually do something that you love doing, you know, and get paid for it into the bargain. God, I mean, I just love... I'd have played for anybody for nothing. Every minute I was out in the football park, I loved every moment. I never had any regrets, because I loved, like I say, I loved every minute of playing football, and I never ducked out and cheated on anyone, whether it was with Leeds or whether it was with Scotland. I've got things that people can only dream about. I've got memories that I can relive. I think I've been blessed.